Born in 1732, George Washington came from a wealthy family, which owned a tobacco plantation in Virginia. His great-grandfather, John Washington, immigrated in 1656 to the New World from England. Later in life, he began his political career and trained under the military during the French and Indian War. This is where he was appointed commanding general of the Continental Army, which would later go on to lead the American Revolutionary War. George Washington is quite famous for being the first elected president of the United States of America. We've even talked about him before on our show in our history lessons here, because during the American Revolution, the Americans were losing the war terribly to the British. That's when Washington turned to his right-hand man, Benjamin Franklin, for help hiring someone to help lead the American troops. Upon Franklin's recommendation, they hired Baron Friedrich von Steuben, who was fired from the Prussian military for being gay, and that was the only reason. Steuben would later be credited as the reason why the Americans won the Revolutionary War, and his codes of conduct for the military are still in place to this day for American troops. Steuben was even hired as George Washington's first chief of staff, and so if you really look at history and are proud to be an American, you would have a gay man named Steuben to thank for being free. But while the first chief of staff was an openly gay man, and while Washington didn't mind him being gay, the reason he didn't mind his chief of staff being gay was because Washington himself was gay too. In their letters back and forth, Alexander Hamilton, who was the first Secretary of the Treasury, was very much in a sexual relationship with George Washington. It was widely known that Hamilton and Franklin Pierce, who was our 14th president, were both gay, but until letters started surfacing between Hamilton and Washington, we didn't really know our first president was gay too. During the American Revolution, a man named Marquis de Lafayette also wrote love letters back and forth with George Washington, and this definitely pointed to a sexual relationship between them. In his writing to Washington, he writes, quote, "My dearest general, there was a friend, my dear general, so much, so tenderly beloved, as I love and respect you, happy in our union, in the pleasure of living near you, in the pleasing satisfaction of partaking every sentiment of your heart, every event in your life. I have taken such a habit of being inseparable from you that I cannot now accustom myself to your absence, and I am more and more afflicted that the enormous distance which keeps me so far from my dearest friend." And please keep in mind, these are just some of the letters they sent back and forth. A lot of them do have sexual undertones that we cannot share here on YouTube for fear of being demonetized, because they're letters that you can look up online for yourself have quite an overtone of a deep and lasting romantic relationship. And while Washington never came out publicly as gay, from the many relationships he had over the years, their letters back and forth, and from this unique likability to hiring gay military leaders, chiefs of staff, and secretaries, all of which was very out of place in the country at the time, we can pretty well certify that he was gay. And even if we didn't call him gay by today's standards, the facts are plain and simple, that Washington had many same-sex lovers. Thank you so much for watching. Check back to see more LGBTQ lessons in history, health, science, literature, and more every single week. As always, I'm your host, Professor Pride. Have a gay day, everyone, and bye for now.